Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Upfront podcast here on Pig Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, joined alongside Joe Kometz for our weekly show, the college basketball preview, where we'll be touching on the 10 most important games this upcoming weekend. A great weekend of college basketball in front of us. We're also going to touch on the Bronny James situation at USC. Got his first playing time last week. Obviously, going to be one of the things to monitor going forward the rest of the year. They have a pretty important game this weekend on Sunday against Auburn as well. So we're going to touch on all that. Another slate, Joe, where it was tough to narrow this list down to just 10 games to talk about, but I think that's a good problem to have. Another entertaining weekend ahead. We had a great weekend last week of college hoops. This week, very slow with finals, but it ramps back up this weekend, and then we're getting into the thick of conference play coming up right after the New Year. So as always, Joe, welcome back, and how are we?
Yeah, Beef, I'm good. Thank you as always for having me on. And I mean, you said it best. Another great weekend of college basketball. Next weekend, off the top of my head, I don't know how good or bad it's going to be with Christmas being on Monday, the NFL having games Monday, having games on Sunday. I think there's some Saturday games. I know there's some Saturday games this weekend, but I think there's going to be some next weekend too. But college basketball, like you and I have said in the past, isn't that good normally with scheduling big games to start out the season. And they're really doing a good job of that and taking advantage of these weekends where now it's just bowl season for college football. You have an opportunity if you have big time games to really get a lot of eyes on it and really help grow the sport, which is fantastic. And a bunch of great games as teams are gearing up for conference play. Some teams definitely need a big win more than others, and we're gonna get all into that right now.
Yeah, so we'll just start it off kind of just touch on some of the stuff that happened last weekend with a bunch of games. One of the big stories was Bronny James making his debut. USC actually lost that game against Long Beach State at home. Was it a distraction with Bronny back, all the hype around it? I saw one video or picture of LeBron and his family sitting in the courtside seats, and during the timeout, there was about 12 different cameras up in their face. It's going to be one of those things where is the presence of Bronny more of a distraction or help this team? Because it's a USC team that's 5-4. They have a game against 7-2 Auburn on Sunday. You lose that game, you're 5-5, and you're going to be facing an uphill battle to find a tournament spot. And it was a team that had pretty big expectations coming into the year, maybe be like a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. But I guess before we get into the weekend slate, Joe, just what are your thoughts on the whole Bronny situation and kind of going forward with that?
I mean, I think it's a good thing that he's back for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I left that out as well. I mean, with him coming back from that devastating scare in the offseason, that is obviously great to have him back on the floor. But now that he's back, just because he's LeBron's son, it's going to bring a whole nother cloud over the entire program.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. They're definitely going to be under some big time scrutiny. The one thing that I guess he was lucky is that I'm pretty sure that game was on the Pac-12 network, so not that many people saw it anyways. But this is a USC team. Even before Bronny came back, they have a home loss to UC Irvine. My brother, I remember texting me and complaining about it because that was the last leg of a parlay. USC was like minus 2,300 or whatever, and they lost. He was pissed about that. But two big, tough losses that when you're looking at your resume, because one thing I think, and Coyle, you and I think pretty similarly with this when it comes to the bubble. If Bronny James is on the bubble, they will find a way to slide that team in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a talented team, obviously. They have a lot of good guys, excuse me. Big loss to Gonzaga, that's expected. It's just those two losses to UC Irvine and Long Beach State. If those results are flipped, the panic button isn't even close to out because they'd be 7-2 right now. They'd probably be a top 25 team. But they have this game against Auburn on Sunday, and then they have a weird. I think the Pac-12 did this a few years ago. They go to Alabama State to end the non-conference schedule. That's probably going to be one of the biggest home games in Alabama State basketball history. It's probably going to be a crazy crowd there. Even though it is before Christmas time, I still feel like you're going to get a bunch of fans there. That's a really tough way to end your non-conference slate as you head in, and then you have Oregon and Oregon State on the road to kick off conference play.
Mm-hmm.
USC, if things go wrong at Auburn, you might be looking at a team that could be like 6-7 heading into January and in a really tough spot, really uphill battle in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and Boogie Ellis was coming into the year, one of the best players, or I think he was even the Pac-12 preseason player of the year at USC, and then maybe one of the top 2 or 3 picks in the draft in Isaiah Collier. You surround all that with the hype with Bronny as well. It's going to be a lot of attention there at USC, and a potential spot where Andy Enfield could get fired if he doesn't lead this team to the tournament. So, big game there on Sunday for them. Auburn's been playing well out of the gates as well. I would expect them to be ranked pretty soon. They had a big time win over Indiana last week, but we'll move to the top 10 games of the weekend now. We got one on Friday, we have 8 on Saturday, and then we have one on Sunday. And Friday night, Joe, we start with your UConn Huskies, number 5 in the country, 9-1 overall versus number 10 Gonzaga, who comes into this one at 8-2. This one is in Seattle, so probably 90% fans in that one are going to be Gonzaga fans. But the 10 o'clock tip-off on ESPN2 has on metrics projecting UConn to win this one 76-72. So we'll go UConn minus 3.5, over under 147.5. Joe, who you got in this one?
I got UConn winning this game 88-77. Yes, I'm a little biased because I'm a UConn fan. I'll throw that out of the way. But all UConn has done, besides that one game at Kansas, has smashed non-conference opponents since the start of last season. They completely dominate their non-conference schedule. I really wish this game was on campus at Gonzaga. That would have been really awesome. It's still, I feel like, is going to be a good environment, but it would have been so much cooler to have that game at Gonzaga because I think they're playing a return game at Madison Square Garden, which does turn into like UConn South when they play there, but it's not the same as playing up at Gamble or even XL Center. But I just think UConn's going to smash this team. They beat them last year in the tournament, so there is a little bit of a revenge factor there. But when Clayton's on, when Caravan's on, if UConn just plays their brand of basketball, I think it is them, Arizona, Kansas, Purdue, Marquette, like the top 5 teams, in my opinion, that can win a national title. As of right now, obviously that'll change come March, but UConn is one of the best teams in the country. There's a reason why they're one of the best teams in the country. I think they're going to smash Gonzaga and really put a statement win as they head into Big East play.
Yeah, you're not going to get rich betting against UConn these past 2 seasons. They're 6-4 to start this season against the spread, which is pretty solid. But dating back to last year when Hurley really got this thing rolling, they're 27-11-1 against the spread. That's the second best mark in college hoops over that time. So they've been a wagon, both on the court, straight up in the victory column, as well as against the spread at the books as well. They've been dominating. And this is also one of the weaker Gonzaga squads, I think, from the last 4 or 5 years where they've been legit, going into the year, Final Four, national championship expectations out of them. This is probably the worst team they've had, I think, in that span, in that little run. They're missing a guy like Drew Timme. They're missing guys like Chet Holmgren, Nembhard, guys that are just dudes out there. Corey Kispert. They don't really have many of them on this squad. So I think with the missing presence of a guy like Timme and with the way UConn's been playing over these past 2 seasons, and I know last year that they lost quite a few guys, but they also returned a bunch of guys as well and brought in some more key pieces. So this is a UConn team, like you said, Joe, I love. I think that they could be a team that runs it back and gets back to a Final Four, gets back to a national championship, but I really do love them in the spot, even if it's a de facto road game. I think we see a high-scoring matchup. I'll go UConn 83, Gonzaga 75, so UConn minus 3.5 and over 147.5. All right, transition to Saturday now. One of the most storied matchups, I think we could say, in the year. I mean, basketball history-wise, between these 2 schools, it doesn't get much bigger than them. We do have North Carolina, Kentucky on the schedule as well, so that might rival it. But number 2, Kansas at 9-1 at Indiana, who's 7-2, a fraudulent 7-2, though I would say. A 12:30 tip on CBS. Kansas is a 7.5-point favorite here, over under 142.5. We'll put it at, with a projection of Kansas winning 75-68 at Haslam. So, Joe, can the Jayhawks keep it rolling here?
Yeah, I think they're going to keep it rolling here. I got them winning 74-69, but I do like Indiana to cover if it is a 7.5-point spread. Coyle, like you said, they're somewhat fraudulent. They might not have played the most adventurous schedule so far, but this game, I'm not mistaken, this game's at Assembly Hall. Yes, this game is on campus at Indiana. That's going to be a crazy crowd. I remember back already over 10 years ago now, they played number 1 Kentucky there. They won. It was crazy. I could see another type of close game like that. I think Kansas will pull away late because they are the better team. I'm not taking away from Kansas at all, but I think the home crowd's going to have everything to do with this one. Kansas maybe makes one or two turnovers. Crowd really gets into it. I can see Kansas kind of pulling away late, shutting the door, but I think 7.5 is a little bit too big a number for the Jayhawks to cover.
Yeah, sitting at 7-2, I think this Indiana squad is fraudulent, as I alluded to at the beginning. I think they might find their way into the tournament, though, at the end of the day, because the Big Ten's down this year. I think the Big Ten might only see 3 to 4 teams get in. But a win like this would be huge for the resume, obviously, with Kansas. But I think Auburn found a way to expose Indiana last week on a neutral floor. That's one of those games where they got their ass kicked. Indiana got out to a lead at the beginning, I remember watching, but Auburn wound up winning that one pretty comfortably. They just have a weirdly constructed roster for 2023. Not much shooting. I just see this team being like 21-12, earning maybe an 11 seed, go maybe back to the first four, and looking back on the season for Indiana as another disappointment. And I think Kansas kind of proves that in this game, that they're going to be a team that maybe they beat those middle pack Big Ten teams that they're supposed to be. They take down a Maryland, they take down a Northwestern. But when you got to play the big boys like Kansas, I just don't think that they're back in that class yet. So back-to-back Saturdays, I'll take Kansas to expose this Indiana team. I'll go Kansas 80, Indiana 70. So Kansas minus 7.5 in the over of 142.5. All right, we now go to arguably the most disappointing team so far in the college basketball season with Michigan State. They are playing number 6 Baylor, who's 9-0. Michigan State sitting at 4-5. Was hesitant to put them on this list, but this is still a big matchup, especially if Michigan State's looking to turn around their season. Another game like with Gonzaga, they're playing this one in Detroit, so close to Michigan State, but not at their home arena. Not sure why a bunch of teams are doing that this weekend, but 2:00 tip-off on Fox. Baylor projected to win 70-65, so go Baylor minus 4.5 and over under 134.5.
Yeah, Coyle, and I actually think that's going to be one of the biggest keys to this game, the fact that Michigan State isn't on campus. Because even if they do get a pro-Michigan State crowd, Little Caesars Arena, that's where the Pistons play, seats over 20,000 people. I do not see 20,000 people coming for Baylor, Michigan State. Even if you get a good crowd, like 75% full, it's not going to be a completely sold out arena. I think Baylor is going to win this game close, 68-65. Like Michigan State to cover that 4.5. I like the under 134.5 here. I think there's real issues at Sparty. I know they're very talented. I know Izzo is still Izzo, but this is a team currently sitting at 4-5. Like you said, I mean, you look at some of their losses. It's bad. It's not. It is. It's not very good. I mean, you lose to James Madison on opening night. That is what it is. But then you've lost every big game opportunity you've had. You've lost to Arizona. You've lost to Duke. And then to end your non-conference play, we've been talking about tough, weird non-conference games with USC. Michigan State has to play Indiana State, who's currently 9-1 and a very good mid-major at the end of non-conference play. And, you look, like you said, Cole, with the Big Ten being so down, Michigan State loses this game. That's like I could be talked into Michigan State to win this game. Like I said, definitely like them to cover the spread. But if you lose this game, you're sitting at 4-6 with a down Big Ten. You are going to have to win at least 75% of your games in the Big Ten to really feel comfortable about getting in my opinion. If you go 21-12, like you were saying, Indiana has a little bit of leeway with that non-conference, being 7-2 at the moment. But Michigan State, they might need to finish top 3 or 4 in the regular season if they want a shot at the tournament.
Yeah, I talked about it earlier, and you were kind of touching on it too. I think you can make the argument that they are the most disappointing team so far in college basketball. I bet on them on 3 different occasions, and all 3 losers against the spread. I mean, they're only 3-6 against the spread this year. Just a downright disappointment, both basketball-wise and gambling-wise. But don't get it twisted. I think that they still will go on a run. There's too much talent on this team where I feel like they're going to figure it out at this point. And it seemed like last week that loss to Nebraska might have been like rock bottom for them. I think this week at practice was absolute hell. I think Izzo kind of put them through the ringer this week. And one of those things where if you don't want to be here, like don't let the door hit you on the way out. Like I'll go out and play with 6 or 7 guys that want to be here, that are going to go out and compete for me every night. Does he get that in this game? Remains to be seen. This is a really nice Baylor team, 9-0 straight up, 7-1, 7-1 I believe against the spread too. But with the line only at 4.5, I feel like it's like screaming to take Baylor, like they're begging you to take Baylor at the books. I think Michigan State is just due for a bounce back, a get right type game, and getting it against this Baylor team, no better way to kind of catapult your way into the new year than a win in this spot. So I think Michigan State's going to come out in this one with a little bit of vengeance. I really like this Baylor team going forward, but it's hard to start 10-0 in any sport, let alone college basketball. I'm going to take the Spartans for the upset in this one. I'll go 74-70 Michigan State. So Michigan State plus 4.5 and over 134.5. There's my play in this one. All right, we go to a battle in the state of Texas. Another game, Joe, where this one is being played in Houston at the Rockets Arena, but it's not getting played on Houston's campus. So another weird situation here. Once again, not sure as to why all these things are switched up this weekend. But 7-3 Texas A&M at number 4 Houston for basically a Houston home game there. Who's 10-0, 2:30 on ESPN2. Houston projected in this one 69-65. So we'll go Houston minus 3.5 over under 135, or excuse me, 133.5.
Well, Coyle, this is the storied Halal Guys showcase in this game. But these are two teams I'm actually looking forward to kind of figure out who they are. A&M 7-3, decent start to the year, but they have a road win at Ohio State. But besides that, nothing that really jumps out on the page that makes me convinced that they are a legit contender in the SEC. They lost to Memphis last week at home. Then you have Houston. Houston's 10-0, but I mean their best win is at Xavier. You know, they have the neutral floor win against Dayton maybe as their second best win. They really haven't played a ton of great competition either. You know, the Charleston Classic field wasn't exactly the greatest this year. It wasn't exactly a murderer's row. So I guess you can't really blame them there. But I think Houston's still going to win this game, 72-60. I think they're going to handle A&M pretty well. That game, you know, losing to Memphis last week kind of showed me who, you know, still trying to learn about A&M, but I just don't think they're a great team. I think they're good. They're kind of been what they've been the past couple of years. They'll be sitting there around like, you know, anywhere between a 9 and an 11 seed, you know, from either playing in the first 4 to having, you know, a 9 seed against a really tough potential matchup with like a, you know, like a UConn type 1 seed. Like they might be playing the best 1 seed come tournament time. And this game being in Houston, I think, is going to be a big difference. You know, Houston fans show out for basketball, especially now being in the Big 12. They're going to be – they are now Power 5 versus Power 5 or Power 6 in basketball. But, you know, they're power conference programs now. I think their fans are really going to enjoy this, take advantage of this, have a big momentum win. Because anytime you're Houston or any other team in Texas and you get to go beat Texas or A&M, regardless of the sport, it's a big win. It's a huge win. You can build off of that. Give me the Houston Cougars to cover the spread and under 133.5.
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times now, talking about college hoops on here. A&M was a team I was really high on coming into the year. Year 5 under Buzz Williams, whereas when at Marquette and at Virginia Tech, he made his deepest runs. Still very early in the season. Still think this is going to be a tournament team, but they're needed some big wins. They've kind of struggled against the top-notch competition that they've played so far, kind of doing what they did last year. A lot of hype coming into the year, but not exactly living up to it. To start, a win here for A&M will give them some serious momentum heading into SEC play, but I'm just not in a spot with this team to take them over a Kelvin Sampson-led team yet. I think Kelvin Sampson's one of the top 5 coaches in the sport, and one of those coaches where if now that he is at Houston, or excuse me, now that Houston is in the Big 12, now that he has the ability, I think, to recruit guys that are going to be able to say, oh, I'm not playing in the American anymore, I'm playing at Houston. He's going to be able to have guys at the level of a Kansas, at the level of a North Carolina, some of the top rosters in the sport. I think we're going to really – everyone from a national perspective is going to respect Kelvin Sampson as a top 5 coach in college basketball. I think he's that good, and he's been doing it with lesser talent. I'm really excited to see what he can do going forward. I think that this Houston team is national title contenders. No one wants to play them with their defense and their aggressiveness. I am intrigued to see how they fare in Big 12 play, but this is a good test for them, as you said, Joe. Let's find out a little bit more about these two teams. Does Houston go to 11-0? Does Texas A&M fall to 7-4? We're going to find that out on Saturday. But I like Houston to get it done in this one, Joe. I'm going to take them 68-61, so Houston minus 3.5, under 133.5. Before we get into the next game, like Saturday, I know it's a big day for holidays and all that good stuff, but the sports schedule is absolutely loaded. I think 6 bowl games, this entire slate of college basketball, and we're leaving out a bunch of good games. And you have from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock the NFL going all day as well. It's like this upcoming Saturday is a big one. So I mean, pick your poison with what you're doing. I'm going to the city for Christmas stuff, but hopefully can see some TVs at one point.
I mean, Coyle, you hit it right on the head. This is the perfect weekend to just sit all time multi TV weekend if you can. Just another great slate, like you said, with the college basketball bowl games. Bowl season is always fun because you truly never know what you're going to get with, especially nowadays with all the opt outs. That does kind of make it more entertaining. Then you have the NFL, and I believe not to get off of college basketball, but I think all 3 games for the NFL, all the teams have winning records right now.
Yeah, so, it's all playoff contending teams.
You say big games. It's like the NFL is just kind of throwing out like the Panthers playing the Patriots this weekend. Like this is going to be some solid games, but I mean this is just a great sports weekend coming up.
Yeah, now we get back to hoops. We're going to the CBS Sports Classic. Always one of like the weirder kind of tournaments, like the culmination of these 4 teams. We have Kentucky, UNC, we'll touch on later, but then you have these two with Ohio State at 8-2 versus UCLA 5-3. Just a weird kind of basketball matchup to have as a rotating schedule every single season. But this one will be playing in Atlanta this year, 3 o'clock on CBS. Ohio State is projected to win here at Haslam 72-67. So Ohio State minus 4.5, over under 138.5. Joe, the Buckeyes pull this one out.
No, I'm going with UCLA here, 68-65. I think Mick Cronin and the guys are going to pull one out here. I got Bruins plus 4.5, under 138.5. Simply because kind of the reasoning that I've been saying with a lot of other teams. This is a big game for UCLA to pick up heading into conference play. UCLA, tough loss against Gonzaga out in Maui. Having to play Chaminade kind of kills them because now they have a D2 game on their schedule rather than even if Syracuse had ended up there, which, is another team coincidentally that we're going to talk about. But going 0-2 against D1 competition out in Maui did not help this team, but they did get to play against top level competition, the best of the best. And I think that's going to be the difference here. Because once again, like I was saying too, lose this game, you're 5-4. You have a non-conference game against Maryland next Friday. That might be a game we actually talk about for the show next week. But a non-conference game against Maryland, and then you go right into it, just like USC as well, going to Oregon State and then going to Oregon to kick off Pac-12 play. You are in need of some wins now if you're UCLA and Mick Cronin, especially Coyle, coming off a big loss to your Villanova Wildcats.
Yeah, things just kind of seem off at UCLA, Joe. I'm not sure if you saw that press conference where he was like, Mick Cronin was making some snide comments about Eric Dixon and Tyler Burton, and he just seems like fed up. I'm not sure if he's always a little feisty guy, but it's one of those things where it looks like he's like a little fed up at UCLA right now, and I'm not sure as to why because they've had some good years under him there, but they're with the Louisville job potentially opening, him and Jerome Tang are the 2 names that I've been seeing the most floated around being connected to there. So he might be one bad season at UCLA away from kind of routing and heading back to the East Coast area to go to Louisville. So things just don't seem good right there. They lost a lot of guys from last season, and they just haven't been able to adjust quite yet. Ohio State off to an 8-2 start. I haven't seen much of them. This is a team I know that can score the basketball, and I think it's going to be tough for UCLA and their lack of firepower to keep up with them. So I'm going to go Ohio State to win this one, 70-65. Give me Ohio State minus 4.5, and we'll go with the under of 138.5 there. I think UCLA's offense is not strong enough to keep up with Ohio State. All right, a game I'm really looking forward to. We got a Tiger on Tiger matchup. Number 13, Clemson, 9-0. I'm hitching my wagon to these guys before you say anything. I'm all in on this Clemson team. I talked about him last week. Talk about him again here, but this is a really good Clemson team, and I think that they could win the ACC. At Memphis, who's 7-2, 3 o'clock tip on ESPN Plus. A weird game that should be televised. I think not on the streaming service, but is what it is. Clemson projected to win 74-73. So we'll go Clemson minus 1.5, over under 146.5. Joe, who wins the battle of the Tigers here?
So I'm going Memphis here, 77-72. Not to take away anything from Clemson at all, because I'm with you. They're a very good team. There's a reason why they're number 13 in the country. 9-0 is awesome. Shout out Terrence Oglesby. He's got his Clemson Tigers are off to a great start. I'm going to take Memphis to cover the 1.5. I'm going to take the over 146.5, simply because this game is being played at Memphis. I mean, Clemson had a big win at A&M, or excuse me, Memphis had a big win at A&M last weekend. Clemson big win against TCU. And that was a really resounding win for them. I saw at one point Clemson, like, I was pissed that I didn't bet them because I predicted them to win. You and I were talking about it. They were at one point, I forget, they were like plus like 180 or something on the money line.
Really?
Or there was at one point they were like decent sized dogs, and I didn't take them. And I was upset because they made it look easy against Jamie Dixon and those guys playing the softest schedule in the world down at TCU. But this is a Memphis team I'm actually kind of looking forward to figure out more about them. Kind of like I said earlier with I already forget who we were talking about, Houston and A&M. Memphis having that blowout loss to Nova, who is the most bipolar team. We've been mentioning Nova a lot already this show. Then a tough road loss against Ole Miss, but then they needed overtime to beat VCU. A team that I think this game is going to kind of show me a lot about who they are. They also play Virginia coming up on Tuesday. That game's on ESPN2. This game, because of bowl games, I'm guessing isn't going to be televised. But I just think Memphis is going to win this game at home. The one thing Memphis fans do care about is the Memphis Tigers basketball program. The Memphis Grizzlies are terrible this year. And Memphis football, their season's over. So I think that, you're going to have a potential sellout crowd. I think it's going to be a really good atmosphere there. And I think the Tigers and Penny Hardaway are going to ride that to victory.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Tigers to win this one too, Joe, but I'm going to take my Tigers. I'm not going to touch on it much. I really went into them a lot last weekend, but they're my team this year, especially out of the ACC. Big believer in these guys. Just a lot of guys that just know how to play their role. They play together. No one on that team's selfish. PJ Hall, arguably the best player in the ACC. He's competing right now, I think, for a first-team All-American spot. Joe Girard has really fit well in there. I've really liked them out of the ACC. With Duke not playing that well, UNC will find out a lot more about them this weekend against Kentucky. But it's a Clemson team playing with house money. No one really expected them to be like this. And Memphis, I agree, Joe. They have impressed me over these past few weeks, getting some big wins. That A&M win, they had a nice win at VCU, which is a tough place to go in the win. This is a Memphis team I do expect to make some noise, be right up there with FAU at the top of the American, but I think they might be due for a loss on this spot. So I'll go Clemson 74, Memphis 70. So Clemson minus 1.5 and under of 146.5. All right, game of the week, maybe the game of the year in the regular season in college basketball. Not just up to this point, but maybe for the entire season. I don't know if we'll see a better, more even matchup, at least on paper, coming into it than this one. Number 1, Arizona at 8-0. Versus number 3, Purdue, 9-1. This one is another game played in Indianapolis, so it's not at Purdue, but it's going to be a de facto Purdue home game. 4:30 on Peacock. You need the cock to get this stream going, Joe. But Arizona at Haslam projected to win this one by the narrowest of margins, 79.89 to 79.13. So not even a whole point separates these teams on the computers. We're setting this one out of pick 'em over under 158.5. Purdue or Arizona here, Joe?
I'm going Purdue 81-80. I think this is going to be a great game. Unfortunately for you, Coyle, if you're going to be in the city for Christmas stuff and you maybe pop into a bar, it won't be on because I don't know that many bars that have the Peacock app ready to go. I understand why these networks want to build the streaming services, but you maybe do it not with the biggest college basketball game potentially of the regular season, with number one playing number three. I think this is going to be a very good game. Once again, it's kind of going to be just ride Zach Edey, and I will not pause when I say that. Going to be the game on the cock. Got to ride Zach Edey. Give me Boiler Ball, 81-80. I think it's going to be a really good game. Definitely taking the over. Even if, 158.5 is a lot of points. I love the over. Definitely going to take that. I'm assuming it'll be a little lower than 158. Not by a lot, but regardless what it is, I'll throw a couple bucks on the over and just even if I got to watch that game on my phone, I'm going to definitely have that game on must-watch TV.
Yeah, as Rothstein says, Joe, this is appointment television, but as you also said, you might have to watch it on the phone in this one. But I think Arizona's in a spot right now where don't don't go against them until proven otherwise. They're 8-0 straight up and 8-0 against the spread. Number one team in the country, perfect in both with just winning the game straight up and beating the books as well. So until proven otherwise, I'm going to roll with Arizona. And I think Omar Ballo is one of the few guys in college basketball that can actually match up with Edey. Size-wise, body-wise, ability to block shots. He's going to be able to – no one's able to stop Zach Edey, but might be able to limit him a little bit. And if he's able to do that with all the firepower that Arizona has on offense, I don't think the rest of the guys on Purdue are able to keep up with them. So two Final Four caliber teams. It could be a potential preview of the national title game down the line. It would not surprise me at all, but I'm going to go with Arizona. I'll take him 79-76. So I'll go Arizona with the pick 'em there. And then I will go with the under of 158.5. I don't know if I actually love that. I'm intrigued to see what the actual number comes out, but if this game's close, I think it's going to wind up going over. So we'll see what the actual number comes out. But for the sake of our picks, I'll go with the under 158.5. All right, second game of the CBS Sports Classic down in Atlanta. 5:30 tip-off on CBS. Number 9, North Carolina at 7-2 versus number 14, Kentucky, who's 7-2. UNC projected to win this one 86-82. So we'll go UNC minus 3.5 and over under all the way up at 167.5.
Yeah, I'm taking the under 167.5. Let me just throw that out there right now, even though I do have 84-80 Kentucky. Definitely going to take Kentucky to cover the spread. This is just a UNC team, even though I know they're having over a week of rest since playing UConn. North Carolina, this is, the tail end. They have one more game against Oklahoma on Wednesday, but they are just in the middle of a brutal non-conference stretch. The 3 games in the battle for Atlantis. Then you had Tennessee in the ACC SEC Challenge. Then you had, like, the ACC does the one random conference game. They played Florida State. Not that Florida State are world beaters by any stretch, but still a conference game you got to get up for. And then you have the UConn game. Now you're coming in here, neutral site against Kentucky. Even though I feel like Atlanta's SEC country, but North Carolina's also pretty far south, so it should be a good game. I'm hoping that there's a pretty solid crowd there. But I don't know. I feel like this UNC team, even though they're number 9 in the country, I watched them a little bit against UConn, and UConn just does this to teams, like I was saying, so that might be why. But they really didn't – like, they're a good team, but I think they're a step away from being a great team, and I don't really know what's stopping them. It might be the coaching a little bit, because if it wasn't for that crazy national title run as an 8 seed, I don't think UNC would be number 9 right now with that roster. I think they'd be, a little bit in the lower part of the top 25, even though it is UNC. So give me Kentucky here, 84-80. Coach Cal get another big win as the Cats get ready for SEC play.
Yeah, I'm really high on this Kentucky team too, Joe. After seeing them last week against Penn, they really impressed me in person. Getting Aaron Bradshaw back there in the middle at the center spot, 5-star recruit out of Camden, was out for, I believe, the first 6 games of the season, 7 games of the season. On Saturday was his second game against Penn, and it was the first game he's got major minutes. And you could just see his presence. He's huge out in the court. He can move. Showed the ability to step out and shoot the 3. He's going to be a big-time piece for them going forward. I mean, I think make him really tough to stop. I really like Rob Dillingham, too. He kind of reminded me of Tyrese Maxey, a guy where he can go out, get his own shot, a little bit erratic at times, but super quick and a really fun guy to watch. So this is a fun team, a nice mix of veterans and youth players. Really like this group. I think that they can make a Final Four run themselves. I do think Armando Bacot though might get neutralized by Aaron Bradshaw on this one. I think by season's end we're going to be looking at Kentucky and being like Dillingham and Bradshaw are this team's top two guys. Is that going to be enough come March just because they're freshmen? That'll be something to be seen. But this Bradshaw guy is really good, and I think he could potentially be a top 5 pick by season's end. So I'm buying a lot of stock in the Wildcats, and I think they're going to get this one done. A neutral site down in Atlanta, a pretty uh, close drive for I guess both teams in this one. So I expect a nice little 50-50 split with the crowd, but should be a really fun game. Give me Kentucky 78, UNC 74. So Kentucky plus 3.5 and the under of 167.5. Big number there. All right. Two more games left. One more on Saturday and then one on Sunday. Alabama 6-3, off to a bit of a slow start for their standards of the past few years. At number 8, Creighton coming off a loss last night to UNLV, who's 8-2. 8 o'clock tip off on Fox. Creighton projected to win 86-81. So Creighton minus 5.5 over under 166.5.
I know it's only been 2 losses, but I feel like if you're a Creighton fan, if you lose this game to Alabama, the panic button isn't out, but you know where it's located and you're getting ready to potentially use it because you take a third loss going into Big East play where they open up immediately with Nova and at Marquette to get you right into the Big East play. You're going to have to play UConn twice. I believe do they only play UConn? They play Marquette twice. I think they only play UConn once. No, they play them twice. I lied. But you're going to have big matchups with big time programs in the Big East that are going to be able to learn as the season goes along. I'm picking Bama to win this game 88-84 because I do think that's a weird loss to come off of. UNLV handled Creighton pretty easily. And I know, the embarrassment factor and, the rage factor kind of kicks in. And they very well could win this game by 20 points. But I think Creighton's kind of down right now. I think they might, take another loss even at home. I think Bama, it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm taking the over of a 166.5. Yeah, I'm telling you, ever since that Florida State mistake, now I'm double, triple checking all my things. But I'm going to go Bama here for the only rhyme or reason, just that it's a weird that loss against UNLV isn't sitting right with me when I'm looking at this Creighton team.
Yeah, you're saying it best, Joe. Creighton's the most, I think, Jekyll and Hyde team in the country right now. We see last night losing to UNLV by 15. I wouldn't be surprised to see them bounce back and win this game by 15. And that's why I struggle to kind of buy long-term stock in them for a tournament run. I know a lot of people are high on them, but which Creighton team is going to show up? But do they get a 2 seed and then they get a team that's a 7 or a 10 that got seeded poorly and Creighton goes out there and shoots the ball poorly and they're back on the first weekend like we kind of see a lot of the years? Potentially. I mean, we don't know what this Creighton team is going to bring us, so I want to see more consistency out of them, but I do think this is a spot where they kind of have to bounce back. I do love the over in this one. Two teams that really like to get up and down the floor and shoot the 3 ball. Kind of reminds me of Creighton, Iowa from a few weeks into the season. That was a really high scoring game. I think we see a similar type of score in this one. I love that over 166.5. Game being at Creighton, I think, is big too. They have one of the best home courts in all of college basketball. So I'm going to take them to win. I'll take them to cover narrowly, but I do think we see a lot of buckets in this one. The over, one of my favorite plays of the week. I'll go Creighton 92, Alabama 85. So Creighton minus 5.5 and over 166.5. All right, final game of the week. We got one for you on Sunday. I put this one on here because I think it might be one of the games that are between some bubble teams come March, and that's Oregon at 7-2 versus Syracuse, who's 7-3. Another weird game, playing this one out in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at the Octagon, I believe it's called, maybe the Pentagon. I forget what it's called.
It's a gun. That's all I know.
Yeah. 1 o'clock tip off on CBS. So maybe if you're a multi TV watcher, you get the red zone on and you get this one on CBS Sports Network, Oregon projected to win 78-72. So Oregon minus 5.5 and over under is 149.5.
Yeah. I think Oregon is going to handle Syracuse here in this neutral. There might be 50 people at this game, by the way, playing this game in South Dakota. I don't understand why we do all these neutral site tournaments. And I get people sponsor them, like, and they pay the schools to do it. But like this is going to be a game. The crowd's going to look a lot like Syracuse football playing South Florida in the Boca Raton Bowl. There might be like 100 people there. I'm going Oregon 83, Syracuse 71. I think Oregon to cover the 5.5. Love over 149.5 here. I haven't watched that much Oregon or Syracuse basketball so far this season, so this is kind of just a gut pick. I like Dana Altman. I already forgot the new Syracuse coach's name, so that's kind of why I'm picking this. And Coyle, I'm going to leave it up to you.
Yeah, I like the points in this one too, Joe. In this matchup, I think it's two high-scoring teams, and as I said earlier, I think we see both these teams competing for a bubble spot. Do they use some head-to-head potentially down the line if it comes between these two? Who knows? But I think it could get down to these two teams as one of the last few teams to get in the tournament. And as you said, I really like Dana Altman. He's a really good head coach. Doesn't always have the most talented teams, but always finds a way to win. Close to 20 games, over 20 games every year. So I think that experience will show against that first-year head coach at Syracuse, Red Autry. And I like Oregon to win this one. I'm going to take them to cover. I'll take them 80-70. So Oregon minus 5.5 in the over of 149.5 there. That'll do it for the Beef Upfront podcast here on Pick Swap Media, the college basketball preview. As we said, Saturday's a loaded day. You got bowl games, you got 3 NFL games, and then you got a bunch of good college basketball games that we touched on here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in as always, especially to the stream. Appreciate you guys checking in. Please like, subscribe, and we will talk next week, most likely on Tuesday, as we kind of give a look ahead before we head into the Christmas weekend.